Hi and welcome everyone. Lisa here for Whimsy Stamps. Thanks for taking the time to join me. So today I'm sharing a 2-for-1 technique. We're going to cut once to create 2 cards. And this is not a new technique. It's been around for a while, but I have some tips and tricks I'm going to share with you throughout the video. So I hope you'll stick around to check those out. I'm using the Slimline Hearts background die from Whimsy. You can use any background die that you have for this technique. A couple of things you're going to need to do this. I use a Swiffer. Now you want to use the off-brand or go to the dollar store and buy your Swiffers since you're just using them for crafting. And we're going to need some cardstock, our die, but we're also going to need masking paper. Also, you could use the wider Post-it tape that they have out now, or you can use repositionable labels. We're going to go ahead, lay down our Swiffer. I've cut mine down to make it a little bit easier to work with. I'll lay that down. I'm going to put the cardstock on top of it and then lay the die down on the cardstock. Now, you're going to notice that I twist everything just a little bit so that it's sitting on an angle. And the reason that I do that, it makes it a little bit easier to crank it through your machine. So if I'd have left it straight with the edge of the die going straight into the machine, I would get that really hard crank that you get when you die cut. And by just turning it on an angle a little bit like I did, that eliminates that hard crank and makes it much easier to crank it through the machine, and it's also easier on your machine. So here we run it through. We went ahead, removed it from the die cut machine, removed the cutting plate and the die, and you can see how everything stayed in place. That's exactly what we want. So here I have my masking paper, and I actually cut my masking paper to fit perfectly within the die cut area so that when I go to position this on my card panel or my card base, I'm not trying to guess at lining it up. I can see the clear cut edges and I know exactly where to put it. So here I'm going to do a little bit of pretending with you, and we're going to pretend that I have put little square foam adhesives on all the large hearts. And then we're going to pretend that I took that glue there and covered all the tiny little hearts with that glue. Go ahead, remove the paper from the back of your foam adhesive squares and then line this up and let it dry. And then peel this masking paper off of the heart. Now, if you had all the hearts glued in place and you push down on them, they would be staying in place because remember, we let this dry. So then all you would have to do is come in and remove the negative piece of the die cut. But I'm going to have to fiddle with it just a little bit here because we were pretending and I didn't do all of that. Let's go ahead and remove this piece, and you're going to see the pieces stay in place. So here are 2 samples I have to show you exactly how it works. So let's talk some about the cards I made. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was using stencils, 6x6 stencils on your Slimline cards. I have the Teardrop stencil here, and I'm going to go ahead and lay it down on my cardstock. Now I have pixie spray on the back of this so it sticks no problem. But if I didn't have pixie spray on it, I could just flip this completely over, run some purple tape right down the edges of the paper here, and then that would hold everything in place while I do my ink blending. I'm using Distress Oxide in Spun Sugar, Picked Raspberry, and Festive Berries. I'm going to start with the Spun Sugar at the top of the stencil, and then I'm going to come in with the Picked Raspberries towards the center there. Now, I'm going to be really careful not to blend down too far with the Picked Raspberries because I don't want to go past that design there. So speaking of designs, let's talk about repeat patterns real quick. You're going to see me look for the repeat pattern, and it pays off to take just a second to find your repeat pattern. So here's where my pattern starts to repeat on the stencil. So I go back up to the top, find that same exact spot in the pattern, and then I just move it down to the repeated area and line it up, and you're never going to be able to tell that we used a 6x6 stencil on this Slimline card base because we use that repeat pattern to help us line this back up perfectly. And when we take this off after we're through ink blending it, it's going to just be a gorgeous continuous pattern right down the front of this. Here, I'm going to remove that. And you can see we have that nice continuous pattern. So we're going to set that panel aside and go ahead and create the next panel. Now, once we get all the panels done, we would take this to the die cut machine and we would use that technique that I showed you at the beginning of the video, where we lay the Swiffer down on our die cut plate, then the card panel that we've inked up along with the die, and we would run it through. And then once we ran it through, we would put our masking paper, remove the die, and put our masking paper down on top of it so that it holds all the pieces in. On this panel, I decided I wanted to add some shimmer to it. I'm using Imagine Crafts Sheer Shimmer Spray, and I just thought some big drops would be fun, and I even came in and added more, a couple of more spritz after I put the cap back on that bottle. And then we let it dry. So let's talk shaker cards real quick. Since I did take this and make 2 shaker cards, I'm using some tape that's 1/8 of an inch thick. Now this tape is amazing for the slimline dies like this because there's not much room around the edge of those dies. So the 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape is perfect for creating shaker cards like this. Now I didn't realize I was out of my acetate, and so I'm actually using packaging to create these 2 shakers. So I cut the packaging to the size that I need it, and I removed the release paper off the double-sided adhesive and then just lined the packaging up across the back of the die cut panel, and then make sure that it's secured with that double-sided adhesive. We're going to come in with some foam adhesive strips. I love these things for shaker cards, and especially the slimline shaker cards, because just like the tape, these are 1/8 of an inch thick. So they're perfect for going around those thin edges of these slimline dies. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that our foam adhesive is touching all the way around, because essentially what we're doing is building a dam to hold all those shaker bits in. Once we have those in place, I'm going to set this to the side, and I've got a really cool little tip here to share with you. So I went ahead and ran another piece of masking paper through the die cut machine with the Slimline Heart background die. I'm only going to remove the bottom part of the backing because I just need this to sit in place temporarily, so I don't need to remove all the backing. And once I have it lined up exactly where I want it, I just flatten that down. We're going to grab the Kiss Off stamp set. Now, if you watched any of my other videos from the new release, you know I love this stamp set because it has all those tiny little elements in it. And I even talked about how those are great to bring in and use on other cards with other stamp sets. So here's a great example of that. And I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink with my acrylic block to stamp some tiny little heart in the hearts of the die cut piece, because those are our windows. And I find sometimes when you create a shaker card, a slimline shaker card, all the pieces fall to the bottom of the card and you have so much empty space. So I thought if we came in and stamped some fun little hearts on our card panel before we built our shaker, it would add a fun element to this. And I actually love the idea of this, and I think it turned out so cute. Here I went ahead and I added my shaker bits. These are the sprinklets. They're available in the store. They're called candy hearts, and they're tiny little clay shaped hearts. And I added those, and I removed the release paper and then centered the panel up on that card base. For the sentiment, I used a large happy word. Y'all know how much I love the large happy word and the happy saying stamp set from Whimsy. And I'm becoming quite fond of the quick strips dies from Whimsy as well. So here are all 4 cards that I created to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed all the tips and tricks that I shared with you. I hope you'll join me again. You know, for more information on the products, you can head over to the Whimsy Stamps website. Until next time, take care.